Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is Timidya Ben Eliyahu, and I have a profound presentation today. Super profound. This is going to shed some light on perfect health and opening the door to achieving physical immortality. We're going to make it practical. We're going to make it real. And let me just preface the class by saying this. What's going to be shared here has nothing to do with my personal perspective, my opinions, or anything like that. This is strictly the word of Yah, as he wrote it, for us to interpret and correctly apply. So we're going to jump right into it. The kingdom of Yah and the kingdom of fungi, achieving perfect health. For thou art an holy people unto Yah. Yah have chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Yah did not set his love upon you, nor choose you, because you were more in number than any people, for ye were the fewest of all people. But because Yah loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he had sworn unto your fathers, hath Yah brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeem you out of the house of bondmen, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that Yah, he is Yah, the faithful Yah, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him, and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations. Thou shalt be blessed above all people. There shall not be a male or female barren among you or among your cattle. And this is the key scripture here. And Yah will take away from thee all sickness, and will put none of the evil diseases of Egypt, which thou knowest, upon thee, but will lay them upon all them that hate thee. So this is going to be the recurring theme throughout this presentation. Yah, his promise is to take away from us all sickness. And these diseases, he indicates, which we know. So we're acquainted with these diseases. It's not something that we don't know about. It's something that we intimately familiar with in our experience in exile and to the four corners of the earth where Yah has scattered us. Also, Yah is not a man that he should lie, neither the son of man that he should repent. Have he said, and shall he not do it? Or have he spoken, and shall he not make it good? You can see the scriptural references below. So the emphasis here is that Yah said that he will take away from us all sickness now.
Hallelujah.
Super hallelujah, because we're certainly in need of it. And in addition, this particular scripture, Numbers 23 and 19, refers to his faithfulness, right? Him keeping his word. Like, for example, the curses of Deuteronomy 28 were fulfilled exactly, precisely. There's nothing written there that was not fulfilled. We who were born in exile in these generations, we know of a surety how true those scriptures are, because we experienced those curses to the T. And now Yah is promising that he's going to take all these sicknesses off of us now. And we expect that to happen as written. Okay. So let's see how this is going to take place.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. All right. The concept around this class, the prefixes or the presets or the state of mind that we need to be in at all times is upgrading, right? We are in the ascension realm, ascending in our understanding, getting greater clarity, greater understanding, so that we know what we have to do in serving our purpose to fulfill the requirements of Yah. So that's our state of mind. That's why we are continually studying to show ourselves approved, right? All the time, upgrading, because we're coming out of a state of ignorance, absolute ignorance and darkness. The scripture says that the earth was in darkness and the people in gross darkness. So as we continue to mature and study, that's a continuous state of mind, because we're trying to reach back to the Genesis state. So our study, our meditation, our prayer, those things don't stop. We continually evolving in our understanding and application of truth. So this term upgrade, to increase the grade or status of, to raise to a higher grade or rank, to raise from one grade to another, to improve or enhance physically, to raise to a higher level, also referred to as leveling up or powering up. Now, they have this term called expansion pack, right? An expansion set. The definition is a supplement or simply an expansion that is an addition to an existing video game. They have these video games out there. And the way that the software companies enhance the game after its release is they release these expansion packs. And these add-ons add new game maps, weapons, objects, characters, adventures, or an extended storyline to an already released game, right? So that those who are using the game, they're able to have a wider experience now, a more in-depth experience. So now we also have software. Our software is called the God mind or the Yah mind, and our body is the hardware. So we have to continually be upgrading our mind, upgrading our knowledge, upgrading our wisdom. So the question is, what version are you on right now? What version was Methuselah on? You know, what version was Elijah on? What version of software or Yah intellect was Yeshua on? What version was Enoch on? These renowned men, they were very high in an elevated state with the level of intellect that they had. And we have to be upgrading all the time, right? Continually studying, continually receiving divine revelation, continually refining our servitude to Yah, right? Practicing what we've been taught, the laws at higher levels all the time. So just like people get excited for the upgrades for a phone, we have to be excited when we have an opportunity to upgrade our intellect, okay? One of the examples of this is that the anointing of Samuel. In the book of Samuel, chapter 10, verse 6, the Spirit of Yah will come upon thee, and thou shalt prophesy with them, and shall be turned into another man. So this is what occurred with Samuel when he anointed Saul. When he anointed Saul, Saul turned into another man. Again, in the book of Samuel, it says, then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed David in the midst of his brethren. And the Spirit of Yah came upon David from that day forward. So that's an upgrade, right? That's an expansion pack. So David also turned into another man. But also now, in this last verse, it says the Spirit of Yah departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from Yah troubled him. So that's like the de-installation of software, right? Yah took his spirit away from Saul. So we have to be careful of that. We don't want to be in that category. We want to be in the upgrade category at all times. And today we have a serious upgrade for those that have ears to hear. And one of the things that we have to be careful of, again, is that historically, Israel has been a stiff-necked people. They don't want to listen to Yah. They resist his instructions. They don't want to follow his commandments. That's been the problem for all these generations. That's why we have been in and out of multiple captivities, climaxing with this most recent one in America and Europe and the other places to where we've been exiled. We just have not been able to get it right. We've been stiff-necked and reluctant and unwilling to follow the laws of Yah, right? People, they're always stuck, man. They always stuck. This definition of stuck of an animal that has been stabbed or had its throat cut, unable to go further. And we see a lot of our people still in this condition. You try to explain to them about their heritage, their identity, their purpose with the Holy One of Israel, their lineage, their bloodline being traced back to Abraham, and they reject it. they do not want to hear that truth. That's still the situation. But hallelujah for the remnant that have been able to accept their role, their responsibility in this regeneration of Israel. So we're in the ascension realm now. So we got to be able to listen, to proceed from the inferior to the superior, right? In Deuteronomy, it states that we were the tail. Now we got to be the head. That's the road that we're on. And that's the trajectory that we're locked into, to rise in thought, degree of characteristic, quality, social station, etc. To go up or upward from a lower level or degree. So we're going up today. And what we're going to learn about the truth relative to achieving perfect health. So here we have an illustration. And the question is, do you really want to upgrade? You're going to have an opportunity to upgrade today. It's like what you're going to choose, to go backwards to the phone on the right or to go forward to the phone on the left. All right, key terminology: disproportionate, in a manner or to an extent which is out of proportion, inadequate or excessive, in contrast to balance, symmetry, agreement, and harmony. Collectively, African Americans, Black people have had a higher mortality rate than any other defined racial ethnic group for most cancers and other leading causes of death, including heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. These disparities are driven by lower socioeconomic status, which is associated with a higher prevalence of risk factors for cancer and other diseases, as well as less access to high-quality healthcare, largely because of inadequate health insurance. So they have all these reasons why Black people lead in all these deadly diseases, these terminal diseases. Although we're just 15% of the population in America, we still lead statistically in the incidence and death from these particular diseases and others, right? Cancer, heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. The overall mortality disparity has existed for centuries. Racism drives some of the key social determinants of health, like lower levels of income and generational wealth, less access to healthy food or ignorance about healthy food, environmental damage, over-policing, and disproportionate incarceration, and the stresses of prolonged discrimination. So you have all these factors against us. And ultimately, the source of this are the curses in Deuteronomy 28, because Yah stated that we would be the tail and not the head, right? He said that we would have no assurance over our lives. And that reality has certainly been realized in our exile, irregardless of where we're at. So these are the diseases of Egypt: cancer, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and the rest. Among all people on earth, we have the greatest need for effective medicine and saving, right? Saving, salvation, in a nutshell, is simply the saving of our lives. All right. Now, I previously gave a presentation on the dangers of feminine pads and toilet paper. That was in my last presentation. And in a nutshell, feminine pads are what cause fibroid tumor, cervical cancer, recurring yeast infection, urinary tract infection, and a lot of other female problems, including endometriosis and others, right? These are caused by the pads. In a nutshell, these pads, the way that they manufacture them, they use fibers that have been bleached. At the conclusion of the bleaching process and the manufacturing process of the pads, the bleach and other chemicals are still in the product. So when women place the pads on their bodies, their wombs, which is the most absorbent area on a woman's body, absorbs all those chemicals directly into her reproductive system. Quickly, we're going to look at the video.
Disposable sanitary pads are made of layers of cellulose combined with superabsorbent polymer powder. Polymer is a fluid-absorbing chemical derived from either petroleum or wheat. Cellulose is the fiber that makes up the cell wall of trees and plants. It also retains fluid. Pulp and paper companies grind and moisten it to form a product called pulp.
Look at another video.
This demonstration shows the critical absorption role the polymer powder plays. It can retain up to 40 times its volume. As the polymer soaks up the liquid, it transforms from powder to gel. Different types of polymers have different reaction speeds.
So these chemicals, when placed in the reproductive area of a woman, they absorb into her reproductive system. Absorption is a two-way process. And this is actually what is causing the majority of women to get fibroids. And again, Black women in particular are disproportionately affected by these diseases. In addition, women have been using baby powder in their underwear to absorb excess moisture. They have found that that baby powder contains asbestos, which is carcinogenic and has caused problems for many women, giving them all types of cancer and various problems. And this is widespread. This is nationwide in developed countries. They say in America alone, more than 29 million women suffer from fibroids. So this is an epidemic.
Wonder where all that recycled paper goes? Well, look no further than your own bathroom. Many brands of toilet paper begin as recycled paper. The bales of paper drop down into the pulper.
So they said that toilet paper begins as recycled paper. Recycled paper is just a fancy term for garbage, okay?
Giant tank with an agitator similar to what you see in a washing machine. It mixes the paper in lukewarm water for about 10 minutes, transforming it into what's known as pulp and screening out all the bits of metal and plastic. Now they have to take out the ink. The ink removal system injects the pulp with air. The ink particles attach to the air bubbles, which rise to the top. The system then skims off the foam, leaving the pulp ink-free. Next, the pulp passes through a series of rollers which squeeze out the water. This dries out the soggy pulp, enabling it to absorb the chemicals they'll use to bleach it.
Okay, the chemical that they use to bleach the pulp in toilet paper, the name of the chemical is called dioxin, which is carcinogenic. So imagine, as brothers, we wiping our behind, let's say 3 times a day. If you multiply 3 times 365 days in a year, that's 1,095, basically 1,100. If you multiply 1,100 times 50 years, that's 55,000 times we have wiped our anus, and the prostate is directly behind the anus. So we've wiped basically our prostate 55,000 times with a carcinogenic chemical. You have to get prostate cancer. So we have to avoid utilizing these products that they have sold us, that they bleached white, giving us the impression that they are clean products, but they are the culprit behind a lot of the cancers that Black men and Black women are getting in their reproductive centers. That was in the last presentation, and I'll give it again at the appointed time. All right, so we're gonna learn a little bit about dioxin now.
Dioxin is toxic, okay? 2,3,7-tetrachloro-dibenzyl dioxin is the most studied form of dioxin. It's toxic. How toxic is it? 1/1,000,000th of a gram kills a guinea pig. We're going to deal with things like 1/1,000,000th and 1/1,000,000th of a gram amounts tonight. But I'll show you that it has an effect on us.
So the doctor is saying here that even a small amount of dioxin has an effect on us. And it's present, like I said, in the feminine pads and in the toilet paper, which we're putting directly in our reproductive centers.
It is a potent carcinogen. It is an endocrine disrupting chemical. Endocrine disrupting chemical, it affects our hormone system. It's associated with decreased immunity. It's neurotoxic. It changes behavior, learning, memory. Okay, and it can cause birth defects. Now, there are a lot of stuff here, right? A lot of things it can do. And we're talking about very, very small amounts. The history of major dioxin human exposure. Now, we talk about very small amounts, but let's look how much dioxin was thrown into the environment here. 20 million gallons of Agent Orange, aerial sprayed over 6 million acres in Vietnam as a defoliant. Dioxin. Amazing, isn't it? Times Beach, Missouri. I don't know if you remember this. They took this oil, waste oil, that had a lot of dioxin in it to keep the dust down and to keep the roads paved. They sprayed us all over the ground there. And when they found out that it had dioxin, it was how many years later? 12 years later?
So there's a lot of it in the environment.
There it is, the non-monotonic dose. Oftentimes we think that, okay, we do these tests on animals. And you give a certain dose to the animal, which is higher than you would give to a human being. We don't care, we do care if the animal dies, but these researchers don't. And so what they do, they can extrapolate the effect. In other words, the more you have, the more effect. However, dioxins are not like that. They're non-monotonic. You see that you reduce the dose and the effect goes up. That's non-monotonic. That's why it's a problem. There's no way to determine when this thing will have its effect. It's a very, very curious chemical.
And this chemical is also utilized in the drinking water because they add bleach to the drinking water. So even when you're taking a shower now, right, the water that comes out of the tap, you're bathing in water that has this chemical in it. How are you going to avoid that? It's in the drinking water. It's in the water you're showering with. It's in the water that you're cooking with, right? And it's in the products that you're using in your personal reproductive area, in your private area. One more video on dioxin.
Dioxin is not your typical kind of toxic chemical, which might affect one kind of effect, not only cause neurotoxicity or reproductive toxicity or cancer. Dioxin seems to have the ability to interfere with basic processes in our bodies, so that in fact dioxin has been shown in our experimental animal studies, and now we're seeing more of this in our human studies. Dioxin has been shown not only to cause cancer, but to cause effects on the skin, to cause effects on the gastrointestinal system, to cause effects on the reproductive system, on the immune system, on the cardiovascular system, on the endocrine system, and on the nervous system as well.
So what we're seeing here is that we're being bombarded by all types of diseases, from all types of sources. I mean, from the water supply, from the things we use on our bodies, the products, the personal products that we use. How are we going to avoid all this? No, this is a chart showing the death rates and the disproportionate statistics that affect Black people. You know, we're leading in these diseases: heart disease, cancer, cerebrovascular diseases, diabetes. I mean, we catching hell in hell. How are we going to reverse this particular process? No, there must be something that the masses of the population are doing or being exposed to that results in these diseases. They're not coming out of a vacuum. They're the result of something, relative law. In order to eliminate the disease, we must stop doing what causes it and or prevent our exposure to the disease triggers. We have to precisely identify the causes of these diseases. And we have to stop being automatons. An automaton is a living being whose actions are purely involuntary or mechanical. A human being acting mechanically or without active intelligence in a monotonous routine. So this is the scenario. We're born in America or Europe or wherever we came into the world, right? In exile. And when we come into existence, whether we're born in the 20th century or the 21st century, Europeans are the dominant civilization on the planet. They're the ones who are teaching their doctrine on everything to everybody. And they are positioned as the esteemed culture on earth. So everybody is trying to follow their customs. Like, for example, Europeans are the ones who pioneered the manufacture and distribution of toilet paper. Anybody who using toilet paper would be classified as civilized. Anybody not using toilet paper would be classified as uncivilized. However, the people who using toilet paper, that whole population is getting prostate cancer. Definitely getting prostate cancer, right? Because they are stuck in a monotonous routine. They never give thought to what is in the toilet paper that I've been using. It never occurs to them to think about that, right? That's what you call an automaton. The same thing with a woman who's using feminine pads. Women are taught to use those by the society around them. They're taught by the women in their family to start using feminine pads as they begin the process of menstruation, which starts around 13 or 14 years old. And they never give thought that this is something dangerous that's ultimately going to give me fibroid tumors and a whole range of chronic illnesses, and eventually cervical cancer and infertility. But when you look at the product, it's white, and we associate white with clean. That's not the case. As we saw in the video demonstration, they could turn garbage white. Garbage and chemicals, they have the power to actually transform that into a white substance that millions of people trust to place in their private areas every single day. And as it's written in Hosea, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. We've been using the products created by our enemies, who Yah said are the ones who hate us. He said he would place those who hate us to rule over us. And we buying our products that we're using in our families and in our households and our bodies. We buying those products from them because we've been totally colonized and made into automatons. We're going to break that cycle today. Okay, so for the tail now to become the head, if we're going to leap or get back to our rightful position as the rulers of this earth, right, which is our divine purpose, we have to do something extraordinary to overcome the gap, to overcome the deficit that we face. Like I said, we disproportionately affected by these diseases and other problems because, yeah, he ensured that we would be the tail, right? In order for us to overcome that deficit, we got to do something extraordinary. We got to make a quantum leap. Now, we get into the meat of the presentation. We're going to go into the Genesis now. We're going to read Genesis 1:29. And Yah said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And Yah took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. And Yah commanded Adam, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. So that's Genesis 1:29 and Genesis 2:15 through 2:16. So we see here the emphasis in the Genesis is that we would be eating from trees. We would be eating from trees. Yah said to eat from trees. Now, historically, and even currently, when most people think about eating from trees, they're thinking about fruit like an apple or a mango. That's the normal state of mind or the narrow concept that we have when we interpret these scriptures. And the English language limits us because the word that they have there in Genesis 1:29 is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. So automatically, like I said, we're thinking about apples, jackfruit, mango, pears, plums, peaches. You're thinking about those types of sweet fruit. However, as we could see clearly in this particular slide, these photographs indicate that there's some other life forms that grow on trees that produce seeds. They're called mushrooms. They're in the fungal kingdom. Fungus also grows on trees and they yield seed. The seeds are called spores. Have you ever had a truffle or heard of a truffle? A truffle is a kind of fungus. It grows underneath the trees. They're one of the most expensive foods on earth because they're so rare in today's world, in the days of the fall. But based on Genesis 2:16, this is something that we need to be eating. And check out the medicinal profile that it has. Anti-tumor, antioxidant, antibacterial, hepatoprotective. That means it protects the liver. Anti-inflammatory, immunomodulatory. And we're going to get back to that. Let's see how important this fungal kingdom is. Interesting facts about the fungal kingdom. The kingdom of fungi has an estimated population of 4 to 5 million species. This is in contrast to the plant kingdom, which only has a population of about 320,000 species. Mushrooms are not plants. They breathe oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide, just like humans. They are genetically closer to humans, more closely than plants. Mushrooms are often called by divine epithets like immortality, divine, God, magical, beauty, and others. The seeds of mushrooms are called spores, and one mushroom can contain more than 7 trillion spores. No, one mushroom now containing that much seeds. Remember, Yah said, eat of the fruits that yielding seed now. So now you have a mushroom, which is the fruit that have 7 trillion seeds, right? Don't be thrown off by the terminology spores. A spore is a seed. They're one of the most potent natural healing elements that are endowed with immunity stimulators, adaptogens, and potent polysaccharides. They're pharmaceutical factories. Now, this is a meal I had at a restaurant in Thailand in 2014. I personally like mushrooms a lot, and it's been one of my favorites since I was a child. However, I recently became aware of how important and how powerful they are. And not only that, became aware of Yah emphasizing that this is one of the foods that we should be eating. A lot of. So on this plate, when I was in Thailand, this was my first time eating some of these different kinds of mushrooms. And on the left-hand side, you can see you have this kind of like weird looking one. I mean, it looked like a sponge or something, right? Look like a weird kind of sponge on the left-hand side. I mean, it stood out to me. I never seen a mushroom like that at that time. So recently here in Nairobi, wherever I'm at on the planet, I like mushrooms a lot. So I go to the Asian markets, like the Chinese supermarkets, because the Asian people, they're into mushrooms more so than Westerners. So I'm able to go to the Asian markets and get mushrooms, right? So when I went there, I saw this mushroom, which is called Tremella fusiformis, also known as the beauty mushroom. So I ate it, I prepared it, I ate it, and it was excellent. Like I said, I had it in Thailand about 9 years ago. So I said to myself, let me see what medicinal properties this mushroom has. And then I came across something extraordinary. So you see the profile of this mushroom, it improves the skin, memory, it lowers cholesterol, it helps with nerve damage, that's dealing with your mind. It normalizes blood sugar, reduces inflammation on the skin and the body. It deals with coughing, protects against cancer and tumors now. It protects the liver, osteoporosis. It improves stomach health and intestinal health. It aids in weight loss. I mean, it's like multiple effects, including anti-aging now. So there's another mushroom called the cauliflower mushroom. So initially, I bought this mushroom at the Chinese market here in Kenya. But when I typed in to research it, because it does look like a cauliflower, I came across this mushroom now, the cauliflower mushroom, which looks very similar to Tremella fusiformis. Check out the profile on this mushroom now. We're getting into the meat of the presentation. This is the benefits of this cauliflower mushroom: cardioprotection, all mechanisms and means that contribute to the preservation of the heart by reducing or preventing myocardial damage. Neuroprotection, an effect that results in the salvage, recovery, or regeneration of the nervous system, its cells, structure, and function. Now, keep that in mind: regeneration of the nervous system. Anti-tumor, inhibiting the growth of a tumor or tumors. Anti-angiogenic, this is key. Treatments that stop tumors from growing their own blood vessels. This slows the growth of the cancer and shrinks it. So if you have a cancer that's already spreading, if you eat a mushroom that has anti-angiogenic properties, it's going to stop that cancer from spreading. Anti-metastatic, inhibiting the spread of cancer cells from the place where they first formed to another part of the body. Antimicrobial, or something that kills microorganisms such as bacteria or mold, or stops them from growing. Antiviral. No, we know that Black people were the demographic most hit by COVID-19 in America. So we need protection against viruses. Whichever one they have coming next, we need to be prepared, and our immune system needs to be stimulated so that we don't have no problems with these things. Because we live in a generation where we're going to see more plagues coming out. And that's why y'all promised, right? Angels pouring out their vials of plagues that's decimating humanity. We already seen it. You have more to come. So we have to prepare intelligently so that we are not affected by those things. How are we going to prepare? Antioxidant, substance such as vitamin C or E that removes potentially damaging oxidizing agents. No, this is key. Antihypertensive. Black people catching high blood pressure. I mean, most of us have family members that have died from this or been affected by high blood pressure. So antihypertensive, a substance used to treat high blood pressure. And the same mushroom now is also anti-diabetic, a substance that helps a person with diabetes control their level of sugar in the blood. Anti-allergic, anti-carcinogenesis, preventing or delaying the development of cancer. Anti-obesity, is good for menopause, prevents macular degeneration. As people age, their eyesight degenerates. This mushroom also prevents that. So now look at this list, right? Look at this list. That list encompasses all the diseases of Egypt for the most part. In one mushroom now. In one mushroom that has no side effects, that's totally safe to take. In fact, Yah said that you can freely eat. And guess where this mushrooms, where it grows? It grows on trees. It's the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To have a single substance with such a wide healing spectrum that targets so many different functions in the body is extraordinary. And I'm a person, I studied herbs for many years, and I've never seen a single herb with a profile like this mushroom that does so many different things in my life, not even near. And that's what made my antennas go up. When I read that profile, I was like, wow, that is what stimulated the research that I'm giving you the conclusions to right now. To summarize the list of properties, this mushroom is basically anti-death. It protects your mind and soul, according to this report, and likely has other properties that have yet to be discovered. Because, you know, these scientists didn't figure everything out. They don't have the mind of Yah, right? They're limited in their capacity to analyze things. But just that analysis alone makes it crucial for us to have available to utilize for our personal health and the health of our family and nation. There's a term called elixir, defined as a substance held capable of prolonging life indefinitely. This is a term I think about for many years. And from what I'm seeing, this mushroom fits that definition. Because if you consuming something like this on a regular basis, which we'll get to further on in the presentation, nothing can kill you. You will be able to fulfill that scripture where Yah says that he will take the diseases of Egypt off of us. And we don't have to rely on 25 different pill bottles, which is the reality for a lot of people. A lot of elderly Black people and even young Black people. They're taking a cocktail of pharmaceutical medicines with a whole bunch of side effects versus being able to take a mushroom now that does more than what those medicines do with zero side effects. The number of fungal species is estimated to outnumber plants by at least a factor of 7 to 1. This is an area that we certainly need to investigate. And it satisfies the commandment of Yah, right? Because he commanded of these trees thou shalt freely eat. Also, now, many of us have converted or upgraded our diet to the vegan diet. A lot of us have stopped eating meat and dairy products. However, even with that, we're actually not seeing the lifespan of vegans is not actually significantly longer than that of a carnivore. And actually, sometimes carnivores actually outlive those that have very disciplined plant-based diet. Why is that? They're missing mushrooms. Humanity has been missing mushrooms in a diet. This is actually the most important medicine/food that exceeds the value of fruits and vegetables. Mushrooms is number one. That's actually the emphasis in the Genesis. When Yah said of these trees thou shalt freely eat. We thinking that it was fruits he was talking about. It's not fruits. Of course, fruits yield seeds and they're grown on a tree, but that's not the highest type of food. And fruits do have medicinal properties, but not as much as mushrooms. The emphasis is the fungal kingdom. In the Bereshit pre-fall environment, it was much more moist. If you remember the scriptures right, that mist came up from the earth. This is prior to the flood. Post-flood now, post-fall, the ground was cursed and the earth started droughting and progressively drying out until today, where the latter rains are withheld. And we have what is referred to now as global warming and the desertification of continents, the melting of glaciers and ice caps in conjunction with excess methane and pollutants in the environment. So the environment that we live in today in the 21st century is far removed from the Genesis environment, where it didn't even rain, but yet was more moist in that state than it is with rain in the 21st century. So the fungal kingdom, which contains mushroom, was likely much more abundant in their numbers and diverse in their species because mushrooms depend on a humid, moist environment to grow. So in the Garden of Eden, that was ideal for them to grow. It was a mushroom buffet in the Genesis. And these medicines are what allowed the ancients to live in a disease-free existence, which extended their lifespans into the 900s. So in these generations, many species of fungi have gone extinct or are dormant because the environment has changed. They likely may not have been seasonal in former times and were always present based on a higher moisture content in the earth. What's unique about mushroom is that they have the fastest growth rate of any organism, and they look very conspicuous. You have to notice them. It ain't something that you can miss. And even now, Even in these fallen generations, sometimes you could find them in clusters exceeding 100 pounds, right? So the fathers feasted on a much larger volumes of medicinal mushrooms, like this cauliflower mushroom that supported their lifespans and gave them a disease-free life where they could fulfill their years on the earth, right? So in this 21st century, the ubiquity of chemical exposure is overwhelming and a virtually inescapable issue. Like we saw the slides and the videos about this chemical called dioxin. I mean, it's everywhere. And that's just one type of carcinogenic chemical. Carcinogenic chemicals in the water, food, personal products, and airborne chemicals affect us constantly. How do we prevent the inevitability of developing cancer and these other diseases? We have to embrace the kingdom of fungi. Fungi, like the cauliflower mushroom, the scientific name is Paraceus crispa, and others, they are an essential part of protecting ourselves and our families, our children, from cancer and other illnesses that are devastating us at this particular point. And Yah will take away from thee all sickness, and will put none of the evil diseases of Egypt which thou knowest upon thee. No, this is what we have to embrace. We have to embrace the kingdom of fungi and start eating them in much larger volumes than we've been used to. Fungi have the potential to eliminate the diseases of Egypt forever. It's the only thing. So restating the salient facts, the attributes of the cauliflower mushroom: cardio protection, that's heart protection; neural protection, that's your mind, your brain, right? Anti-tumor, anti-angiogenic, anti-metastatic, antimicrobial, antiviral, antioxidant, anti-hypertensive. So that's high blood pressure. And anti-diabetic. I mean, that's extraordinary. Think about that. All these elements in one mushroom, curing diabetes and high blood pressure, anti-allergic, anti-carcinogenesis. You know about obesity. Obesity is devastating our people everywhere. I mean, now we've seen the children, fat children, even they're super young, and their parents, their undisciplined parents, giving them all this false food with all this excess sugar and salt and oil. I mean, the children now, I mean, it's a plague of obesity. So we need medicine like this that is side effect free, that we could eat freely, that it does a whole bunch of things. These are wide spectrum medicines. So instead of cancer killing us, we can now literally kill cancer if we follow the commandment of these trees thou shalt freely eat. Japan, China, and Germany are cultivating it because they have recognized something very special. We Israelites, we got to be next. We have to prioritize utilizing these particular healing elements that Yah placed there for us, right? These Asians, they are the countries that have been leading in these areas, and they use these things, they use these mushrooms. They're the ones who have done most of the research that I'm going to be sharing with you. And Yah said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Genesis 6:3. So Yah blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast, upon every fowl, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fish of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. This is the initiation of the Noahic covenant. And listen to this part. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. So now that scripture is in contrast to what we have in Genesis. In Genesis, it says, of these trees thou shalt freely eat. Now here in Genesis 6:3, Yah is telling us that everything that moves shall be meat for us, right? So the eating of animals now is instituted. So let's look at this now. Let's look at this. See the lifespans on the left, in the left column? 900s, right? Noah was the last man to live more than 900 years old. His son Shem only lived to 600. So that's a third cut, man. That's a significant cut. Shem lived 350 years less than his father. Why? Because something happened in this flood. You want to know what happened in the flood? This is what happened in the flood. In Genesis, it was the pristine environment, right? Mist came up from the earth. It didn't rain at that particular point, right? And it was a moist environment, which is ideal for mushrooms. That was the Garden of Eden. Now, after the flood now, what happened in the flood? It was water, 40 days and 40 nights of water. And it took a long time for the water to abate, right? So the wicked people died, all the animals died, but you know what's interesting? That we never give thought to. All the forests died as well. All the trees died, because trees don't live underwater, right? So the forest died. So when the forest died, also that means that the mushrooms died, right? The mushrooms died. Because the mushrooms are dependent upon the forest, upon the trees to grow. That's where they grow. As that picture that I showed you earlier. So now what happened is subsequent generations after Noah, they don't have access to mushrooms anymore like that. So it fell out of their sight. They ain't seeing it no more because they don't have any forest. It also fell out of their understanding. By the time forests regenerate, right, and become mature and start to produce mushrooms again, there was a gap in the understanding of the people of what they were and how to use them. And they had already started eating meat because they had to eat meat. The reason Yah said that you have a new food source in the meat is because the initial food source, mushrooms and fruits, had disappeared because the trees were gone. If Noah did a 360 before he entered the ark, right, and he looked all around him, what he would have saw was forest, right? And that's what he built the ark out of. He built the ark out of trees, right? So high density forests, pre-flood. Post-flood, when Noah exited the ark, if you do a 360, you're seeing grasslands at best. You don't see no forests because everything, the whole world was underwater. You don't see no forests, right? So it took a long time for forests to recover and for mushrooms to start growing again. And like I say, in the meantime, people had to eat. So yeah, he gave them the Noahic covenant, which instituted for the first time the eating of animals. And we could see the consequence now in the right column of what that did, the effect that it had in the lifespan of the ancients, right? Shem, 600 years old. Nobody didn't even make it to 500 years old. It went from 6 to 4 something. Nobody didn't even make it to 300. Then it went to 200, then 100. Now, to these fallen generations that we live in, man can't even make it to 100 years old, right? We're not even living to a 10th of the capacity of our lifespan capacity. Devastating. We ain't even making it to the 120. We less than that. But the point is here is that the absence of mushrooms is what facilitated this. Because if you eat mushrooms all the time, nothing, no diseases can attack you. You can't get sick, which is the foundation for having an extended lifespan. So we got to get back into the rhythm in this era of regeneration into utilizing these higher medicines. Everybody following me?
Hey, King Toda Raval.
In the back. Okay, now a lot of people don't believe in man being able to live into those type of lifespan, 900 years, 800 years, 700 years. It seems almost impossible because we don't have a testimony. We haven't seen a testimony in thousands of years, right? I mean, like I said, we barely making it to 100, if that. I mean, most people checking out 60 years old, in their 60s, in their 70s, 80s, barely 90s. So we don't have any testimony. So it's hard for people to believe that that was even possible. Let's look at some evidence here, right? So you have various organisms that they're able to live into the hundreds of years, right? You have whales, fish, mussels. They have a Greenland shark. They say these sharks are more than 500 years old. There's this jellyfish. And this jellyfish, once the jellyfish is born and grows to an adult size, if the environment doesn't have enough nourishment, this jellyfish could revert to the polyp state, right? Polyp, that's the fancy scientific word for egg state, right? It could revert to the egg state indefinitely and remain dormant in the egg state until the environment has the required nutrients. Then it'll grow back into adult. And they say that this jellyfish could do that like infinite amount of times. So that jellyfish is actually immortal. So there's evidence of immortality in the earth right now and super longevity, right? They have tortoises that outlive people. So there are organisms that live much longer than humans, who's supposed to be the highest species, right? But we've fallen. No, this is the ultimate testimony of immortality that should erase doubt from anyone. Trees are immortal, right? Which everybody basically knows. Yah says, for the tree of the field is man's life. Many trees don't produce edible fruit directly like a mango or apple, but they produce fruits indirectly via the specific types of medicinal molds, fungus, and mushrooms that grow on the tree. Some fungi are very selective and only grow on very specific types of trees. Trees on this earth have been scientifically documented to be thousands of years of age. Now, if you plant a tree, if the tree is left undisturbed and nobody cuts it down, it will actually live forever now, right? It could live forever. And they have these trees that science has documented: Great Basin Bristlecove pine, 4,800 years old; Norway spruce, 9,000 years old; Allers tree, 3,000 years old; cypress tree, 3,000 years old. Even they have those redwood trees and sequoia trees. Those trees are thousands of years old and among the largest and tallest organisms on earth. So we have testimonies of physical immortality on the earth right now. Even though we may not think about it, trees are immortal, which stand as a testament that Yah exists, and this is actually something that human being can attain if he's in the right cycle. Trees stand as a clear testimony of the achievability of physical immortality. They exist right now. Trees demonstrate that physical immortality is actually real. So within trees exist all the elements that enable them to live for thousands of years. Trees are endowed with super strong immune systems and other properties that enable them to ward off certain afflictions that would otherwise weaken and kill the tree. So trees have immune systems as well. How could the Adamic family or Israelites tap into that immortalizing power? The clear answer is mushrooms. Mushrooms extract and concentrate the immortalizing essence of the trees and package them in a form that can be assimilated by man to reinforce his vitality. The eternal life force of trees gets embedded within the mushrooms, which we then consume, and that energy is transferred to us. The trees of life may not have been fruit trees, but specific types of trees that mushrooms grow on. Edible fruits, like a mango, do have certain health properties based on the variety, and certainly we will continue to consume them. However, mushrooms possess much more potent characteristics by an order of magnitude in terms of prolonging and protecting the life of the Adamic species into the immortal realm. This realization of how powerful fungi are expands our understanding of the dietary instruction in the Genesis. Yah commanded, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. 2 and 9, out of the ground Yah made to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life also in the midst of the garden. So we need to be eating from trees. We are supposed to be tree eaters. That's what Yah commanded us in the Genesis. And that's what we need to follow, that instruction, in order to get these diseases of Egypt up off of us. These mushrooms have that power. So we have to incorporate them into our diet in much higher volumes. Trees have been the silent immortals in the earth from the beginning. Magnificent and resilient beings that routinely live into lifespans spanning thousands of years. For those who are seeking immortality or just perfect health, why not look to trees? And that's what Yah commanded. Trees are what Adam was explicitly commanded to eat from by Yah. Mushrooms can be thought of as the nipples of the tree that provide us access to the inherent immortal power of the tree. In other words, the milk of the tree is made accessible via the mushrooms that grow on it. We can't eat the tree directly, but the mushrooms extract the eternalizing constituents of the tree into a soft, bioavailable form for us to use. We have been victims of European-defined standards of diet. They have given us their measurements for suggested serving sizes for everything. And as a result, they have steered us into dietary confusion, disease, and death. We have to continuously seize the power to define and update our dietary standards as required for our ever-ascending elevation. Not consuming the required amounts of mushrooms has man in a state of severe malnourishment and disease susceptibility, rendering us incapable of reaching the full extent of our inherent age capacity, which extends into the hundreds and possibly even thousands of years, just like trees. That's how we were originally designed now. It's just a consequence of the curse, and Yah said that he will cut our lifespan. So what he did, he hid mushrooms from us. He hid them from us. And that's why we've been dying at these young ages, can't even reach 100, and subject to all these diseases. For those of us who are seeking perfect health, trees and their indirect fungal fruits are the key source of the element that a living soul needs to greatly extend life. Major testimony. This is a serious part of the presentation here. Enoki mushroom, anti-cancer, anti-allergy, antibacterial. There's a whole bunch of things that this mushroom here doing, right? Not just one thing. Let's check out this article. There's an article about these enoki mushrooms, right? There was a doctor in Japan, his name is Dr. Tetsuro Ikekawa, a former epidemiologist at the Research Institute of the National Cancer Center in Tokyo, Japan. So an epidemiologist, these are doctors or scientists, they study epidemics, or they study the things that's killing people, right? He's a specialist in that. So this doctor in Japan, he wondering why the cancer rates in this place named Nagano in Japan, their cancer rate is very, very low from 1972 to 1986 in comparison to the surrounding areas. He looking at the statistics. This one section in Japan, they have an abnormally low cancer rate over a 14-year period. You know what he found out? That this place was the center of mushroom cultivation. The people that were living in that area, they were growing this mushroom. A cluster within the population of Nagano died less frequently from cancer. Enoki mushroom growers and their families. Now, this is very significant now. Many enoki farmers gave their employees the bruised or blemished mushrooms that were deemed unattractive to shoppers. So these citizens ate far more mushrooms than their neighbors. This doctor, he concluded that their higher rate of enoki mushroom consumption directly correlated with the lower cancer death rate in Nagano. So we have a concrete testimony now. The people who growing the mushrooms, they're definitely eating it more than everybody else, right? Because they're growing it. So they're getting all the extra mushrooms. And that corresponded with a significant decrease in cancer rate. And check this out. This article focuses on cancer, right? It said that this doctor, he working at the cancer center in Tokyo, Japan. So his focus is cancer, but it's not just cancer. I'm certain if they did further tests on that community, they would find that they benefited from all these factors here. It's not just cancer that it was protecting them from. So here we see an example that higher mushroom consumption can have on not just one person, no. This is a whole community it affected. Yo, people of Yah, Israelites, we have to start eating mushrooms. Mushrooms was the manna that they was eating in the wilderness. Nothing grows that fast. Nothing grows overnight except mushrooms. Mushrooms have one of the highest or fastest growth rates of any organism on earth. They can appear overnight. And in addition, Yah instructed Moses to put the manna in the ark of the covenant, that the latter generations might know of its significance and its importance. So now it's coming to light how important these things are now. We have to elevate our diet. We have to upgrade our diet. The key revelation of this article is that we are seeing the effects that increased mushroom consumption has had on an entire community over a 14-year time span. That is national defense. And that's only one type of mushroom now. There's only one type of mushroom, and a lot of them have similar overlapping anti-tumor, anti-cancer, anti-disease characteristics. And we need it. Okay, some of you might be familiar with this icon here. Incidentally, this is also out of Japan now. And like I said, these Asian countries, they are knowledgeable of the power of these mushrooms. This character, if you're not familiar with it, this is Super Mario, or the name of the character is Mario. This is a video game published by one of the biggest video game companies on earth, this company named Nintendo. Let's take a look at what enhances the power of this video game character. So we see here that the character got bigger from eating the mushroom, right? Got bigger and stronger. Let's see what else. So it's another type of mushroom. That mushroom gave the character an extra life now, right? So that's symbolic of what they actually do. And like I said, this is out of Japan. I used to play this game, and I remember getting the mushrooms, but I didn't have the connection that a person in Japan would, because that's a normal part of their diet and culture in Japan. They know about these mushrooms, like the article that we just read. So these Asians, they really know about these mushrooms, but we in the West, you know, we come up growing under the dominion of Europeans, heathens, right? In fact, Yah said the worst of the heathen he placed over us, which don't know about these divine medicines as these Asian cultures do. And now we, who, like I say, we have the greatest need because we disproportionately affected by these diseases, we better learn about these medicines and start using them to protect ourselves and our families. Okay, this is a key slide, eating annuals versus eating perennials. Like I say, a lot of us have converted from being carnivores and we have elevated our diet. You know, we stopped eating meat and we have moved to a plant-based diet. In a plant-based diet, we find ourselves eating vegetables mostly, okay? And vegetables are annuals, right? Tomatoes, peas, eggplants, broccoli, corn, and wheat. Those are what are referred to as annual food. Those are foods that you have to continuously plant every season. right? Annual, something that lasts 1 year or season. It's transient, a plant that completes its growth and bearing process in one growing season. Perennial, continuing without interruption, invariably present, constant, perpetual. So that's trees and fungi. Trees are perennial, right? Once you plant a tree, you don't have to plant it again. It grows and it potentially lives forever once somebody don't cut it down. So let's look at our food choices here. And what happens when we eat food? Eating transfers the vitality or life essence of a substance onto the being that ingests the substance. So when we eat something, we are getting the life force of whatever it is that we eat, okay? So if we're seeking everlasting life or perfect health, we need to be eating something that have a strong life force or a weak life force. So if we're seeking a higher state of health, what types of food should we focus on consuming? Annuals or perennials? What type of food has the highest potential for immortalizing a living soul? Man in the era of the fall eats primarily annuals. Think about that. We're not eating from trees, we're eating from plants, right? Annuals. Like I said, tomatoes, potatoes, peas, eggplants, broccoli, corn, wheat. That's really is what is the substance of our diet. That's the thing that we focus on. You know, beans, those type of things. That's what man is preoccupied with eating. So we eating the transient food, which results in a transient lifespan and susceptibility to disease. It must be understood that mushrooms may seem to be annuals, but the root system of mushrooms can be thousands of years old, just like the tree. And they are extracting the immortal essence of the tree that they live on. So just like in the Genesis, man likely consumed more mushrooms, which had a commensurate effect on his lifespan. Mushrooms have the inherent power to impart the immortality of the tree to us when we consume the mushrooms. We have to start eating them. So which food has the greatest potential for perfect health? When you look at the plate on the left, it looks so appealing. It looks so nutritious. And this is what we're used to eating, right? Vegetables. But actually that plate on the right, which has the mushrooms, that has much greater potential to prevent you from getting diseases and to improve your health. That's the most powerful meal on the right-hand side, not on the left. The one on the left, it looks a lot more colorful. But remember, Yah said to eat from trees. If you eat the plate on the left, those don't grow on trees. Those grow on plants, annuals. What's on the right is what grows on trees. And that was the original diet of man. Because that's what Yah said, of these trees thou shalt freely eat, mushrooms grow on trees. Numerous studies have shown that regular consumption of certain mushroom species as either a regular food or as extracted compounds is effective in both preventing and treating specific diseases, mainly through immunopotentiation and antioxidant activity. Thus, the intake of mushrooms and the extractable bioactive compounds appears to be effective in cancer prevention and growth inhibition. Another important fact is the certainty that mushroom extracts, compared with other drugs, show very low toxicity when regularly consumed, even in high dosages. So this man, Shu Ting Chang, right, who is the director of the Center of International Services to Mushroom Biotech in China. By the way, he's over 90 years old. He writes 6 books on mushrooms, co-edited 7 books, and 180 articles on scientific journals. This guy is a heavyweight in the mushroom field out of China. Sorry, not Japan, out of China. The guy is a heavyweight. And like I say, he's over 90 years old. He's saying that we need to be eating more mushrooms, even in high dosages, is safe. Okay? And it's been verified by accurate scientific and medicinal studies. Check this out.
So, one of the wonderful things about mushrooms is that unlike a lot of herbal medicines, which, maybe you could just use for a short amount of time, or they might have interactions with medications, or they might have, active compounds that are useful in the short term, but if you take them for too long, then they can have a negative effect on the body. Mushrooms, unless you're allergic to mushrooms, so if you can't eat food mushrooms, you can't have medicinal mushrooms. But other than that, they're pretty much something that is safe for everyone. They can be used by children, they can be used by animals, and they're, we could call them a functional food, although they're also used as a herbal medicine. So they kind of cover those two, areas. So a nutritionist can comfortably use them, but also a herbal medicine practitioner or a naturopath can use them. And then, of course, in the traditional Asian herbal medicine traditions, they are used. So safety is an amazing thing. The fact that they can be used long term, and the fact that they have a lot of compounds that are only available in mushrooms, and the more that they're being studied, the more that people are seeing that actually they do numerous things. And the main thing that any mushroom that you eat, whether it's a culinary mushroom or a medicinal mushroom, on some level it's going to be helping to modulate the immune system. And that means that it's helping to either raise immunity when needed and also lower immunity when needed. And that's really important, because I think historically people thought mushrooms were just immune stimulants, and that then limits, because say if someone has an autoimmune condition, you don't want to stimulate the immune system. So there's a lot of really useful immune herbs that you just can't use in someone with an autoimmune condition. Whereas because mushrooms have this modulating effect, you can help someone who's, recovering from a virus or is kind of chronically getting coughs and colds and has to take, medication because they have an autoimmune condition which is suppressing their immunity. You could then give this person a mushroom and know that it's going to be supporting them with their sort of coughs and colds without actually counteracting their medicine that is, helping their autoimmune condition in check.
I think that's a really good explanation.
No, this is a key aspect here, immunity modulating. One of the key points, or several of the key points that this doctor stated, is that number one, they're safe to use, even by children. They're immunomodulating, so they could crank up your immune system if needed, and also dial it back if needed. So this is intelligent medicine now. Intelligent medicine. And this is she's only echoing what Yah said in the commandment. He said, of these three thou shalt freely eat. He didn't put a limit on us. He said, we need to be eating these mushrooms all the time. That commandment is basically saying, thou shalt eat mushrooms. That's what Yah is saying when he says, of these trees thou shalt freely eat. Thou shalt eat mushrooms. This is the medicine of man. This is the original food of man. But in the fall, like I say, even we don't interact with them because we live in cities. We totally out the loop with how important mushrooms are. And we have been made meat eaters by these heathens that implemented or imposed their wicked culture upon us. We need to get back to our original diet. We are actually fungivores. Turkey tail. Listen to this. This is a significant video clip here. Listen to this one.
I don't want to get into that right now, but we've identified 7 different distinct pathways of the immune systems activated from the consumption of these mushrooms. Now, this became deeply personal to me in June of 2009, when my 83-year-old mother called me up. She's a charismatic Christian. She's not seen a doctor since 1968. She called me up and says, Paul, I'm scared. I didn't even recognize her voice. She was shaking. I said, what's wrong? And she said, my right breast is 5 times the size of my left. I have 6 angry lymph nodes, dark and swollen on my right side. I said, I couldn't believe it. So why didn't you tell me sooner?
Okay, so this man, he's a mycologist, one who studies mushrooms, and he wrote several amazing books about mushrooms. So what he's saying here, just for some context, his mother called him, she's 83 years old. One of her breasts is swollen 5 times the size of the other breast. She has breast cancer at 83 years old.
And so I rushed her to Swedish Breast Cancer Clinic in Seattle. And then we got the worst news after the second visit. The oncologist said she should have been seen 2 years earlier. The cancer is inoperable. They could not do a mastectomy because of her age. They couldn't give her radiation therapy because of the same reason, because of the likelihood of infection. And so the oncologist tried to make the best of it, saying you live a long life. And we kept on asking, how long? And she said, you're lucky if you have 3 months. The tumor is erupting out of her breast, across the meridian, invaded her sternum, and went into her liver. So we had a circle meeting. Many of you have had this.
So she has stage 4 cancer now, right? And it's already spread. He said it's in her sternum and in her liver. The cancer already spread, and she's 83 now.
And for her funeral, she chose a pink dress. She bought the cheapest coffin that she could find because she was going to Jesus. There's a lot of tears. And then on the third visit, the oncologist said, you know, if your immune system could kick in, Patty, you might be able to beat this. And so she said, you know, there's this turkey tail mushroom study that's going on at Mystere Medical School, University of Minnesota Medical School. You might want to start taking turkey tail mushrooms. Well, that's my mother said, well, that's what my son was talking about, but she had to hear it from a doctor, right? So my mother started taking turkey tail. She was on Taxol briefly, had a horrific reaction, refused to take it, and then she said, we're taking Herceptin, a wonderful drug. Well, that was in June of 2009, and I'm happy to say my mother.
So thank you for that. I love you, and I'm going to let you know that. Bye.
She crossed the 5-year disease-free period. She's totally cancer-free.
Cancer-free. Cancer-free after starting to take mushrooms at 83 years old. This is quite significant now. And the cancer had already spread now to other organ systems in her body. And she made a full recovery and was alive at least 5 years afterward.
Now, this led to a study saying, well, maybe turkey tail mushrooms can enhance Herceptin. Now, this is good news that my mother survived, but then she told me something her oncologist told her. Of the 50 women who joined the Herceptin program, enlisted in a new program in Ellensburg, Washington, where she enlisted, of the 50 women, 48 of them have died. My mother was the only one taking turkey tail with Herceptin.
Another significant point, she was the only survivor out of 50 women. And she was the only one taking this mushroom now.
So this is interesting on multiple levels. She's been written up as a best case outcome in several medical journals. She had no chembrain, no nausea, no loss of appetite. So she's happy, and her acumen has come back. She's smarter now and more quick with her wit than I've ever seen.
No, this is significant too, because if you remember, some of the properties of these mushrooms are that it enhances your brain and regenerates your brain. So what he stated here is that her acumen also improved because, you know, when people get up in age, they're starting to forget Alzheimer's, dementia, all these things. And many of us, we have had instances where our family members have gotten these type of degenerative mental diseases. And these mushrooms help protect against that. This is quite significant. And she was the only survivor out of 50 women.
We're pleased to have Dr. Christopher Hobbs as an invited guest tonight. Christopher Hobbs is a 4th-generation internationally renowned herbalist, licensed acupuncturist, author, clinician, botanist, mycologist, research scientist with over 35 years of experience with herbal medicine. He's the author of over 20 books on herbal health, and he has a doctorate from UC Berkeley in phylogenetics, evolutionary biology, and phytochemistry. He's a founding member of the American Herbalist Guild. And tonight he's here to give us a presentation on medicinal mushrooms and talk about his book, Medicinal Mushrooms, The Essential Guide.
No, you heard his credential. This guy is legit, okay? Legit. Hear what he has to say about mushrooms.
Welcome, Dr. Christopher Hobbs.
Probably one of the biggest benefits, and my focus really is trying to get more people to eat more fungi every day and make it a major part of our diet, not as a side dish, but making it a major part of our dish, of our meal. And then if we have meat, that's the side dish.
I hope everybody heard that. That's quite significant. That's in harmony with what Yah said in Genesis, of these trees thou shalt freely eat. This is our primary food. We are fungivores. We're not actually supposed to be vegan. Plant-based diet is not enough. We have to be eating mushrooms. That is actually the staple. That's what we have to get back to. That is what's going to take these diseases of Egypt off of us. That's the first thing that the guy said. All they're saying is what Yah said. He's saying we got to eat mushrooms. He said even meat eaters, they have to make meat the side dish and make mushrooms the main course.
So fungi, vegetables, whole grains, carbohydrates, some of the recent studies that are out there, and I follow them closely on anti-aging or living longer, shows that the very best diet for longevity is a complex carbohydrate diet, moderate in protein, moderate in fat, and obviously fiber and high fiber. So that's the optimum diet and not a high protein diet. I think we're eating actually too much protein in this country. Getting back to mushrooms, mushrooms are the highest fiber food out there. There is no other food. Beans are very, very high in fiber, but mushrooms are the very highest fiber food that we know of. And some mushrooms like reishi, and this is another big part of my talk.
So he mentioned reishi mushroom, which is a super powerful one. But in essence, the conclusion of a man that wrote 22 books on herbs and health, he said that we need to be eating significantly more mushrooms, right? Which is the same thing that Yah said. Like I said, all those scientists are simply echoing of these trees thou shalt freely eat. And like I said, the interpretation of that scripture primarily is pointing toward mushrooms. And let me say this, the amount of tree species on earth, they say have 70,000 species of trees, right? You know what species of fruits they have? The sweet fruits I'm talking about is only 2,000 species of fruits. So the vast majority of trees don't actually produce an edible sweet fruit, meaning that the vast majority are actually mushroom producers. That's the emphasis of those particular scriptures, which we're revealing at this particular moment. And that's what we need, because those mushrooms, like I say, the medicine in them is beyond any other medicine. It's beyond any other medicine. Fungivory or mycophagy is the process of organisms consuming fungi. We're actually supposed to be fungivores. I'll restate that lifespan certainly is dependent on multiple factors, not just diet. But what we're focusing on here is the contribution of the oral diet, all right? So now you have these fads of diet that we see in the 21st century. You got people who is vegans. Vegans, they still, although they're very disciplined, they're living sometimes longer than carnivores, but sometimes carnivores are living the vegans. They're not really necessarily living longer. Same thing with vegetarians, right? They're not really living much longer than carnivores. Even you have some people dabbling in live food. They say you're not supposed to be cooking the food. And even though they're doing that, they're not really living much longer. You have some people who eating mostly fruits. All these fads, I'll call them, they're not producing the promised effect. They're not really taking lifespan to the next level. But the fungivore now, the fungivore, those of us that start eating these particular foods, we're the ones who are going to be beating all these diseases and potentially extend our lifespan easily into the hundreds and possibly 200 up to 900. as we get back in cycle with the commandment that Yah established. Because if we killing the diseases with these mushrooms, what's going to kill you? That's the question. What's going to kill you if these diseases ain't killing you? If we eliminate disease, that opens up the potential to physical immortality. Invulnerable, incapable of getting sick, not liable to be physically hurt or damaged. The presence of mushrooms in the diet makes man invulnerable to disease. The absence of disease will be a phenomenon common only to fungivores. These are wide spectrum medicines. Yah put those here for us. And like I say, he promised and he intend to follow through on his promise where he mentioned that he's going to take these diseases of Egypt off of us. And these mushrooms are the answer based upon their profiles and the thing that they protect us from. Vulnerable, susceptible to illness, receiving wounds or physical injury. The absence of mushrooms in the diet makes man vulnerable to disease. These diseases are common among carnivores and vegans, right? The diseases of Egypt: diabetes, heart attack, stroke, Alzheimer's, dementia, cancers, high blood pressure, loss of eyesight, or macular degeneration, which we saw the mushrooms prevent all of those. But we have to consume them as our staple now. They have to be the main course in our meals.
I recommend mushrooms and mushroom products frequently to patients, and I teach other doctors about their uses. Mushrooms have molecules not found elsewhere in nature. There's some that have totally unusual properties, like lion's mane mushroom.
The lion's mane mushroom is a globular, cascading, icicle-formed mushroom. It tastes like lobster or shrimp when you cook it, but a researcher in Japan by the name of Kawagishi discovered it in around 1993. And I don't have a foggiest idea how he discovered this, but he discovered that this mushroom stimulates nerves to regrow. And he postulated it could be an effective treatment against Alzheimer's.
Since we don't have anything for Alzheimer's, and since this is non-toxic, we should test it. Mushrooms are completely unusual organisms, and they're ignored by so many people, and yet they're a vital interface between all forms of life.
At the University of Southern Florida, a very interesting study came out. Mice were trained to have a conditioned fear response. And so when there's a sound that's associated with a pain, later on, they just heard the sound, they cowered in fear. When they treated the mice with psilocybin, the compound in magic mushrooms, the mice dissociated that link. The mice overcame the fear conditioning response.
We started with very low doses to as high a dose as 1 milligram per kilogram. Now, what was interesting, if you look at double labeled cells, in other words, birth of new neurons, we saw an increase in neurogenesis.
Neurogenesis literally means neuro for nerves, and genesis, rebirth or beginning of. The regrowing of neurons. They were not using the same neurological pathways you have in the past. This is really exciting because it means that the brain has a plasticity about it, is able to heal, is able to grow. It just needs the right compounds to help it develop new neurological pathways. We're all getting older. We'll all suffer some degree of dementia. What compounds can we take that enhances and preserves neurogenesis? I know many, many people who would not dare take a psilocybin mushroom trip. The concept of them taking 1/50th of a dose, something like that, and it causes neurogenesis that might make them smarter or a better mood or happier, that's a whole different subject.
All right, so now these minds that we have, these God minds, these Yah minds, that we have spent many years cultivating and studying and growing and putting back together after this devastating exile. We have to protect our minds. I mean, for one of us, like Moray, for you to get dementia or Alzheimer's, I mean, we can't have that. We have to protect our minds. These mushrooms have that ability. So they enhance our health, make us immune to disease, in addition to enhancing our mind, our acumen, right? Our capacity for learning. I mean, this is awesome information. We have to begin utilizing the tools that Yah instructed us to consume. We have to begin to utilize them. Aphrodisiac, this is a huge topic here. A drug or preparation inducing sexual desire or enhancing reproductive functions. This is something that we cannot overlook. Okay, this is very important. Now, in a 2016 study, it found that men with low sperm concentrations had a 30% increased risk of developing diabetes and a 48% increased risk of developing heart disease compared to men without infertility diagnosis. So what this is saying is that if a man has low sperm count, right, or your reproductive function is impaired in any way, basically you have a higher incidence of disease. You're getting sick and you're dying. If your reproductive center is not functioning, you're more susceptible to disease and death, okay? Male infertility, including low sperm concentration, is also associated with increased cancer risk, particularly testicular cancer and high-grade prostate cancer. So if you ain't functioning sexually, if you cannot function, you checking out. You're going to die at an earlier rate. That's what the statistics show, okay? And all these chemicals that we've been exposed to, like I say, wiping yourself with toilet paper, the toxins from the toilet paper directly enter in your anus and into your prostate via absorption because of the pores in your skin. So all of us been affected to some extent. So now we have to compensate. How do we counteract that? These mushrooms, they have this mushroom, the one that you're looking at, the name of it is cordyceps. Cordyceps military supplementation enhanced sperm production and sperm motility after just 5 weeks of supplementation. We need to be taking these tools that enhance our life because our sexual reproductive capacity directly impacts our lifespan. Everybody understand that? This ain't no joke. This ain't just about a carnal desire that we feed in here. We feed in our sexual potency. And when we read about the ancients in the Genesis, they was having children into the hundreds of years. It makes sense. So for us to be on that level and to protect our sexuality, our sexual function, we have to be consuming these medicines. And it's also good for women. It's not just for men. The same thing applies. It says it has been used traditionally for the enhancement of sexual function in both men and women. So we need to be using these mushrooms that Yah instructed us to use in the Genesis. Of these trees, thou shalt freely eat. These are some of the mushroom species that they have growing in Africa. These things are big. This is what you would have seen in the Genesis in far greater numbers. And we live in this world, like I say, in this 21st century. All these diseases are chasing us. All these diseases are chasing us and taking us out. And if we eat mushrooms, we could kill all these diseases. And mushrooms, they have the ability to take us into those longer lifespans. Because if we kill the diseases that was killing us, then how will we die? We're just going to continue to live as promised. This is what we got to be eating, right? This is what we got to, this is actually what you're looking at is perfect health. This is the primary food of man. And it may seem odd, this may be the first time you've ever heard any information like this, but it lines up with the Genesis. It lines up with the Genesis. And Yah said, behold, I've given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. Mushrooms grow on trees and they yield seed. In the ascension realm, what can we expect to find? The revelations of the age, phenomenal epiphanies, and the full manifestation of the promised effects resulting from reactivating the truth in our lives. The promise is that we would finally defeat death. The kingdom of fungi is now our ammunition. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. We have to embrace transformation and embrace these higher concepts. We can't be scared about this information. Don't remain in the caterpillar state. In summary, Yah commanded us to eat of trees in Genesis, and this is when men lived in healthy states into the hundreds of years. Mushrooms grow on trees, so Yah is essentially commanding man to eat mushrooms in the Genesis. Eating from perennial sources conveys the most power, not eating annuals. Yes, we will continue to eat vegetables, but the power really lies in the mushrooms. That should be the main course in our meals. People of color need mushrooms as part of our diet more so than other races because, like I said before, we are disproportionately affected by the worst diseases. So we need to ensure that we eating these things. I mean, look, we got to be serious about it. Mushrooms modulate the immune system. Without mushrooms, our immune system functions are in a suboptimal state. So basically, what you're looking at is mankind right now. I'm talking about the whole earth. What we know as immunity or the immune system is actually functioning or is functioning in a very, very low state. The immune system of humanity worldwide is probably about 10% of where it actually should be. And that's why we only live in to a 10th of our lifespan capacity. We are living to 900 no more. We barely making it to 100, right? Meaning that we functioning at 10%. Mushrooms is what activates your immune system. Without mushrooms, your immune system is actually not activated. It's deactivated, which is why we're so vulnerable to all these diseases, right? So Yah promised that he will take away from us all sickness, these diseases of Egypt, these lifestyle diseases, which we know. Even he emphasized, which we know, which thou knowest. And he says, and the way we're going to take these diseases away is getting back to our original diet. We are supposed to be fungivores, mushroom eaters. He hid them in the fall. Now, in the rise, in our rise, as Israel rises now, we finding out these keys and the true interpretation of these particular scriptures. These are the key varieties that you need to research and incorporate into your diet: turkey tail, reishi, chaga, lion's mane, enoki, shiitake, tremella fusiformis, cordyceps, the cauliflower mushroom. If we eat in these things on a regular basis, it's impossible for us to get sick. Impossible. And Yah commanded the man, saying, again, of every tree of the garden thou mayst freely eat. These trees is not just fruits. The emphasis is actually mushrooms. So this is my contact information. Again, my name is Tamidia Eliyahu. Thanks for tuning in. You can check out the website, ministryofdivinemycology.com. You could take some notes here to jot these numbers down and this information down. If you want to contact me directly, you can reach me on WhatsApp. The number is there. My email, deepestroots@gmail.com. And man, hallelujah. You know, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to present this information that will assist us in getting our health together, you know, keeping our minds intact and projecting us into a realm where we're achieving perfect health. Again, the website is Ministry of Divine Mycology. We need some support so we could continue to research this information and bring you the most up-to-date cutting information on the potential that these mushrooms have. So please check out the website and give us some support. And man, all the best, Hebrew Israelites. Get some of these mushrooms. They're available in powders. Get acquainted with the Asian markets in your area. A lot of cities have Asian markets, Asian plazas, and you can find a lot of these medicinal mushrooms. They have them there. Start to incorporate them into your diets, okay? Because they're going to protect you. You know, they're going to protect you, and you have to make them the main course now. You know, there's a lot of powders and supplements that they sell online. Try to take these things daily, because we have been affected by so many chemicals and still affected. The environmental, you know, they're airborne, they're in the water, they're in the food. How is it that we're going to prevent ourselves from being affected by these chemicals? You know, we have to take mushroom as a preventative measure, you know, to counteract the effects of all these chemicals that we're being exposed to until we get in a pristine environment. And even in a pristine environment, Yah commanded us to eat of these so that we may prolong our lives. So now that this information is getting back now into our circles, you know, we have to begin to use it. And, you know, they taste real good. This is an opportunity for us to elevate, you know what I'm saying, examine and create and share new recipes and our revelations in regard to how we use these things. So at this particular point, I'll conclude the presentation.
I can't swallow. I can't swallow that. I can't swallow what you are swallow. I can't follow who you are follow. Mind's hollow, understanding shallow. They never know who the Messiah hallow. Zion Heights, they never travel. History unravels. I don't want equality. I talk in superiority. That's my destiny. No one stands next to me. The world been expecting me. Recognize the scepter. Solomon a lecture. Ancient words and letters are the mental architecture. Revelation receptor. Genesis trendsetter. No one does it better. Acknowledge with a humble gesture. Sacred bush burning. Take off your shoes. This is holy grounding. Heartbeat pounding. Hear the trumpet sounding. Prophecy, this message founding. New dominion founding. In my presence, the chosen come around it. Recognize these words sounding. King of kings, coronation crowning. Coronation crowning. Coronation crowning.